knives and wear their skin as a tribute to their gods. SCP-034 has the ability to allow its bearer to take on the appearance of another individual. If SCP-034 is used to cut a piece of flesh from a living individual, and that piece of flesh is placed against the skin of another individual, the second individual would take on not only the appearance but all physical characteristics of the first individual. Testing has shown that the minimum amount of skin required can be as little as 1 square centimeter. However, testing has also revealed that the amount of time the transformation lasts is directly proportional to the amount of flesh used. The ratio of time the transformation lasts to flesh used has been measured at approximately 1 hour for every square centimeter used. Once the time limit has passed, the affected individual will revert to their original form. Analysis of SCP-034's ability shows that its method of mimicking another individual is nearly flawless. Not only does SCP-034 change its bearer's physical appearance, but their actual physical attributes as well, including height, weight, muscle mass, bone density, hair growth, eyesight, strength, physical medical conditions, and even DNA. The only physical traits that are not carried over in the transformation process are wounds caused by SCP-034 itself. Its ability shows that its method their original personality and memories while transformed. Even though the process is nearly instantaneous, taking only a few seconds, human test subjects have described the transformation process as extremely painful. Subjects also may suffer psychological trauma depending on the extent of their physical transformation. Side effects are especially serious if the subject takes on the appearance of a person with differing gender or with wildly different physical attributes. However, in order to function properly, the individuals who have their flesh cut off by SCP-034 must still be biologically alive to maintain the transformation. Should the individual whose identity has been stolen expire, the effect immediately wears off. Further details may be found in Lab Report 034-A. Also, SCP-034 only appears to work on human subjects. Cross-species experiments with SCP-034 have resulted in data expunged. SCP-034 came into Foundation possession when an imposter disguised as Doctor attempted to infiltrate the site. The imposter was apprehended when authorities discovered the real Doctor tied up in his home with a large portion of his right arm skinned. Further details may be found in Post-Interrogation Report 2211. Lab Report 034-A. We've decided to test several scenarios dealing with the limits of SCP-034's capabilities. Test 1. Sample was taken from a deceased human cadaver and applied to subject D-452. There is no observable effect. Test 2. Sample was taken from D-532 and applied to D-452. D-452 successfully mimics D-532's appearance. Upon termination of D-532, D-452 immediately reverts back to the original form. Test 3. Sample was taken from D-433 while under a medically induced coma and applied to subject D-452. D-452 successfully mimics D-433's appearance and manages to maintain the transformation and consciousness. Test 4. Sample was taken from a brain-dead medical patient who suffered a massive brain hemorrhage and applied to D-452. D-452 successfully mimics the patient's appearance but immediately loses consciousness upon transformation. D-452 does not regain consciousness until the transformation period expires. D-452 retains no memory of the event. Test 5. Sample was taken from D-625, who suffered a broken arm due to a confrontation with security staff. D-452 successfully mimics D-625's appearance, including the broken arm. D-452's broken arm is remended when the transformation period expires. Test 6, sample was taken from a terminally ill medical patient and applied to D452. The patient's terminal illness was caused by an inherent genetic defect. D452 successfully mimics the patient's appearance as well as the patient's illness. Both the terminally ill patient and D452 expire at the same time, after which D452 reverts back to the original form. Test 7, sample was taken from a chimpanzee and applied to D466. D466 experiences rapid growth of hair across their entire body. There are otherwise no other significant physical or physiological changes. Body hair disappears when the transformation period expires. Test 8, sample was taken from an Atlantic salmon and applied to D466. There is no observable effect. Test 9, under O5 authorization, a sample taken from SCP is applied to D466. D466 exhibits extremely adverse reactions upon transformation and, data expunged, resulting in significant damage to the testing environment, multiple injuries among test and security staff, and the death of D466. The testing of anomalous humanoids with SCP-034 is suspended indefinitely. Post-interrogation report 2211. As per standard operating procedure, we first attempted to interrogate the prisoner via non-violent and non-invasive means. However, when such methods proved ineffective, we began to implement conventional interrogation techniques. While partially successful, we deemed it necessary to use SCP, SCP, and SCP. We managed to learn the following facts. The prisoner had extensive knowledge of the existence of the Foundation and its inner workings. The prisoner had extensive knowledge on other SCP-related agencies and groups. The prisoner was not acting under any official capacity from any government agency. The prisoner obtained SCP-034 and instructions on its operating under any official capacity from any government agency. The prisoner obtained SCP-034 and instructions on its operating under any official capacity from any government agency. The prisoner obtained There are so many variations on the story of the Prince George County goatman that it is impossible to keep them straight. For some, he is but a lonely, angry goat herder who went berserk after finding his beloved goats dead due to teens tampering. To others, he is in the same family as Bigfoot, a mythical beast that roams the earth. In perhaps the most bizarre tale of them all, the goatman is the result of a ghastly experiment at the Beltsville Research Agricultural Center. The USDA facility has actually been forced to deny that one. The goatman terrorizes lovers, chases teens, and decapitates dogs. He yells, squeals, and makes goat noises. He's made reported appearances all across the region. He has inspired fear and fascination for decades, but according to the historian, author, and Mark Obsasnik, the foremost expert on the Maryland legend, there is a canonical goatman origin story. And begins on Fletchertown Road in Bowie. The first media mention of the goatman came on October 27, 1971, in the Bowie-based Prince George's County News. In the article, writer Karen Hosseler took a deep dive into the University of Maryland folklore archives. She mentions the goatman along with the ghosts and something called the boatman that also haunt the woods around Fletchertown Road. 2 weeks later, Hosseler wrote another newspaper article with the headline "Residents Fear Goatman Lives, Dog Found Decapitated in Old Bowie." The article described the search of a family, the Edwards, for their missing puppy named Ginger. Days later, Ginger was found near Fletchertown Road dead and headless. The article connected the deceased dog with the goatman, saying that a group of teenage girls including the Edwards' 16-year-old daughter, April, had heard some strange noises and seen a large creature on the night the dog had disappeared. It also reported that sightings of an animal-like creature that walks on its hind legs were increasing along Fletchertown Road. On November 30th, the goatman got its first introduction to a larger audience thanks to the Washington Post. An article headlined "The legendary figure haunts remote PR. George's Woods," identifies the young men who found Ginger, Ray Hayden, John Hayden, and Willie Gein. The Prince George's County Police are also quoted in the piece saying that the legend just gets passed on from generation to generation and that they've been receiving more recent calls about Goatman sightings. Upsasnik grew up mere miles from Bowie in Greenbelt and remembers very clearly the first time he heard the Goatman legend. He was in 7th grade and in the back seat, they would tell us to shut the hell up or they'll dump us on Fleshtown Road and the Goatman will get us, Ozanek says. He became enamored of the story. While attending Roosevelt High School, Upsasnik and his friends would go Goatman hunting. In fact, searching for the monster had become a local teen obsession. Upsasnik describes Goatman parties on Fleshtown Road and near Crybaby Bridge on Lotsford Road. This sounds like something out of Dazed and Confused. Halloween night 1979 was one of the craziest nights of my life, Upsasnik says. Dr. Barry Pearson is a professor of folklore in the English department at the University of Maryland and was in charge of the aforementioned University of Maryland Folklore Archives. Even today, he says, if I mention the Goatman on the first day of class, all the locals know exactly what I am talking about. Pearson thinks the legend of the Goatman was influenced by car culture in the 60s and 70s, which gave teens the freedom to discover the world around them. It might also be tied to what students were learning about Greek culture and the half-man, half-goat god Pan in school. Certainly, the newspaper accounts helped. And goats are, you know, king of freaky anyway. Goats are known to be smell and sometimes kinda charming, but if you look at them closely, especially in their eyes, they are really scary in their own way, Pearson says. In 1987, Upsasnik started writing for strange magazines and wasted no time